On today's installment of Meet the Machines, we're going to be checking out two rad new pedal offerings from Paul Reed Smith. Hey there kids, it's your good buddy Uncle Ben Eller, and welcome to a brand new installment of Meet the Machines, the gear series for people who like things that are nice. I like things that are nice. And on today's video, I've got two very nice things to show you from the fine folks at Paul Reed Smith who have entered the pedal making game with their Horsemeat Transparent Overdrive and the Mary Cries optical compressor. I use both of these pedals in a bunch of different ways in that opening little ditty that you heard right there. And in today's video, I'm going to show you guys how I created some of those tones using my Paul Reed Smith hollow body and the Marshall 1987X 50-watt plexi, plus a couple of Butamus big guitars because the Mary Cries compressor also works excellent on the bass. As always, today's video is brought to you guys by everybody who supports my channel over on my Patreon page at patreon.com/BenEllerGuitars. Sign up today, even for just $1 a month. You're going to get access to a ton of bonus lessons, downloadable tabs, backing tracks, and so much more. So don't delay. Sign up today. So I've had both of these pedals for a couple of weeks now, and I've tried them out with different rigs and different guitars and stuff. And they're really, really versatile. I think you could use these in a lot of different applications. So it doesn't really matter what style of guitar player you are, you'll be able to find a use for these on your pedal board. The Horsemeat Transparent Overdrive, which I think is probably one of the best named pedals of all time, Horsemeat, is kind of modeled after a legendary overdrive, a legendarily overpriced overdrive, if you ask me. Only this one is a lot more flexible and definitely a lot more affordable. You could put that in front of a totally clean amp for a nice fat overdrive sound, or do like what I was doing and put it in front of a slightly distorted amp with the gain on kind of low, just for a little bit of extra kick in the amp pants. And the Mary Cries optical compressor here is among the most transparent compressor pedals I've ever used. It doesn't really mess with the tone of the amp or your instrument at all. Just gonna give you a little bit more fatness, sustain, kind of level things out a little bit, especially if you're playing like clean stuff, you know. I mainly used it on the clean tones that you heard in the video and the bass tones as well. Yeah, I'm just gonna grab this lovely Paul Reed Smith hollow body piezo here and show you guys how I created some of the tones that you heard in the intro. Okay, so for starters, I had the guitar here in good old drop Jesus tuning going into the Marshall 1987X, which is a 50 watt plexi. This is one of the new ones, and it sounds absolutely insane. And I've got the amp running into the Sir RLIR box for recording. It's going direct into my interface. And throughout the recording, I used some of the stock Sir IRs as well as an own hammer. It's like a Marshall 412 in there for the heavy tones. Let's talk about the rhythm sound, because a plexi on its own doesn't really have all that much gain. Here's how it sounds without the Horsemeat in front of it. Really, really awesome tone. Not necessarily a ton of gain on it. So with the Horsemeat here in front of it, I gave it a little giddy up, okay? And I turned the level up really high on the pedal. I've only got the gain at about like 9 o'clock, a little less than 9 o'clock. The voicing I've got turned up to about 2 o'clock just to get a little bit more brightness out of it. Same with the treble, just kind of brightening it up and tightening it up a little bit by turning the treble up to about 130 or so, if these are clock dials, you know. So let's hear how it sounds with and without the overdrive in front. So here's without. You can hear it really tightens up the amp, gives us a little bit more gain and saturation on there. Sounds awesome. I just recorded a left side and a right side. That's it. It's just 2 tracks of guitar and it sounds monstrous. Plexis and stuff, man, once they're in a mix, they just sit like nothing else. They sound amazing. I came up with a progression like that the other day on the couch. I thought it sounded really cool. It's kind of opathy, kind of ghosty, but honestly, I think the biggest thing that I'm kind of thinking about here is the orchestral score to the original Hellraiser, because I watched that the other day. Really cool score on that one. I have a lesson for it way back on my channel. So give that one a listen. I think you'll probably hear the similarities between the two things right there. And with those rhythm tracks, one side I played like the way I did just a second ago. And on the other side, I kind of harmonized those dyads, so it's like this. Gotta hit them with the Layla, right? Snuck that in there for you. So yeah, just 2 sides with the Horsemeat out front here just to give it a little extra gain and saturation going on. Nothing really all that crazy, but it just makes that amp really shine. So for the lead tones, I kept the amp and stuff basically set the same way. I selected a different IR in the Sir RLIR box. I find a lot of times if you keep the amp settings the same but just use a different IR, it'll sound like a completely different amp. That's a topic for another video though, but long story short, the speaker that you're hearing matters a whole lot. I did change the settings on the pedal a little bit here. I turned the gain up more to almost halfway, just so I get some extra sustain. I knew I wanted to solo with some big sustaining vibrato and stuff on here, so I goosed up the gain a little bit. I also turned down that treble and the voicing switch a little bit. That way it wouldn't be too terribly harsh, since I was going to be on the high strings and stuff a lot. Let's hear it again without the pedal, and then you can hear the effect that the Horsemeat is having on here. Again, a really cool tone, but it just doesn't sustain the way that I needed, so let's hear it now with the Horsemeat in front with those settings. Sounds really good. Again, you get some extra bite, some extra sizzle on there, and definitely a lot more sustain. So as you can see, it's a really great sounding overdrive pedal, whether you're doing this for rhythm guitar stuff or your leads. Now let's talk about the clean and bass tones, because this is where I ended up using that Mary Cries optical compressor the most. Okay, so if you really want to get a cleaner tone out of the plexi, you've got to work that pickup switch and volume knob. So I was using the neck pickup here with the volume rolled down to about, I don't know, 6 or 7, just to get that nice, warm, kind of opathy clean tone. I was kind of going for those sounds you heard on like Damnation and Watershed and records like that. So again, it's still a little bruised up, but I think it sounds great. But the problem you run into is with the volume knob down like that, sometimes you lose some fatness and definitely some sustain on those chords. So this is where the Mary Cries compressor comes in. I had it set about like this, with the output gain a little below 9 o'clock and the compression up, I think it was probably about 2 o'clock whenever I was doing those. And that just gave me that fatness and that sustain back the way I wanted. Let's kind of compare the two of them. You'll notice as I turn the pedal on, it doesn't really change the tone of the amp at all. Check this out. Here it is without the pedal. Really nice, just keeps that tone sounding a little bit more lively. The progression there is again that D minor, E7, B flat, C kind of progression with that droning D bass note. I think it sounds kind of haunting. I like that progression a lot. And that's what I did for the clean tones on there, just some nice stereo delay that Eric added in while he was mixing it. And that's about all that you need. A little finesse with that volume knob and that neck pickup, and you're good to go. Now, during that solo section that I played right there, I played around with the output gain on the compressor too, because if you drive this up quite a bit, you'll get some really nice sounding, it almost sounds like board distortion, you know? Like if you're in a really nice studio and they got a great console and good compressors and stuff, you can drive those up and get some really nice sounding distortion out of it. That's what I did for that middle section. Again, trying to think of that Michael Ockerfeldt, you know, clean lead tone sort of thing. But listen, as you turn it up, you can get some really nice, fat, distorted sounds. And again, without the compression on, it would sound like this. No real sustain or anything. Really nice sounding, very transparent. So that's what I did for that clean solo section, is just drive the gain up on the compressor. Now let's move over to the big guitar so you guys can hear how this thing sounds on a bass as well. Because especially with the fretless bass parts I put on there, it really adds in a lot of nice fatness and sustain. Let's check it out. So I used my fretless Sir J right here, which is a glorious instrument, and I was running that into the Axe FX3. Now this is just one of the presets. It's called Direct Inject. It's just basically like a really clean DI sound. So there's not really even a lot of ampage involved here. If you got a really good sounding bass, that's kind of all you need in the studio anyway. So without the compression on here, it still sounds really good, but again, you don't have the sustain, and it doesn't really even out your playing all that much. So if you play a note a little too hard, it'll really jump out at you. If you play a note too quiet, it's gone, but with some compression on there, it really levels all that out. Now, I had the compression here pretty high, probably about at the 3 o'clock range, and the output gain a little over 9 o'clock, just to get a little extra push. Let's hear it with and without that. I've also got a healthy dose of Jaco Pastorius Chorus on here to help with my questionable intonation that I have on the fretless bass. So that's a nice little help for me. So let's hear it without there. And now let's fatten it up a little bit here with the Mary Cries. Really lovely sound. And as you can hear, it's not really affecting the tone of the bass all that much. It's not coloring it in any way. It's just making it a lot more fun and easy to play. I always find any kind of bass benefits from a good amount of compression, but especially fretless, especially with those like round wound strings on there. It's so dark and tubby sounding. A little compression goes a long way, and this pedal does a really good job for that. Now, if only it could help my fretless playing be a little bit more in tune, but I think that's on me. So there you go, guys, a look at some glorious pedals by Paul Reed Smith that are definitely going to be a regular part of my pedal board arsenal. I recommend you guys check them out. Honestly, I think the best thing you could do would be to buy them from Sweetwater using my affiliate link down there in the video description. After you like this video, subscribe to the channel and ring the bell for notifications every time I upload a new slice of fried gold. Also, if you want to help support the channel and get tons of extra stuff, be sure to check out that Patreon page today over at patreon.com/Ben Eller Guitars. Thanks again so much for watching, and a huge thanks to all the lovely people at Paul Reed Smith for making things that are nice. Cheers, guys.